In the hills of Tecoluca, El Salvador, a fortress rises from the landscape. Concrete walls stretch across the horizon. Watchtowers stand guard day and night. Floodlights illuminate the grounds long after sunset. Drones circle overhead, watching from above. And behind those walls sit thousands of prisoners, heads shaved, dressed in white, packed into cells designed to hold them indefinitely. This is CECOT, the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, or Terrorism Confinement Center, a mega prison built to hold 40,000 inmates. It is the largest prison in the Americas, and it was built for one purpose: to lock away the gangs that terrorized an entire nation. According to its supporters, CECOT helped achieve what many thought was impossible. It helped break the grip of MS-13 and Barrio 18, the gangs that once controlled daily life across El Salvador. But to its critics, the prison represents something very different. A warning, a symbol of what can happen when a government decides that security matters more than individual rights. By the end of this video, you'll understand how El Salvador went from one of the most dangerous countries on earth to a place where many people now say the streets are finally safe, why this prison became famous around the world, and why that transformation is still tearing people apart in debate. To understand why CECOT exists, you first have to understand what El Salvador lived through for decades. Two gangs dominated the country, MS-13 and Barrio 18. These were not small street crews operating in the shadows. They controlled neighborhoods, entire towns, bus routes, markets, and businesses. In some areas, they had more power over daily life than the state itself. Extortion became normal. Shop owners paid a war tax just to stay open. Bus drivers paid to keep their routes. Families paid to keep their children alive. Refuse, and the punishment could be death. For years, El Salvador had one of the highest murder rates in the world. Families buried loved ones and stayed silent because speaking to police could make them the next target. People avoided certain streets after dark. In some neighborhoods, people avoided going outside altogether. Children grew up knowing that gang recruiters might come knocking, and saying no was not always an option. Gang territory was not marked by official borders, but everyone knew where the invisible lines were. Cross the wrong street, speak to the wrong person, wear the wrong colors, and you could disappear. The gangs carved the country into zones of fear, and for years the government could not stop them. Prisons were supposed to be part of the solution, but inside the old facilities, the gangs often continued operating. Leaders held meetings, gave orders, and coordinated attacks from behind bars. Some prisons were so overcrowded that inmates slept on floors, in corridors, and on top of one another. Guards were outnumbered. In many cases, incarceration did not end gang power. It simply moved it behind prison walls. Then came March 2022. Over just a few days, El Salvador saw a sudden wave of killings. Fear returned almost overnight. For President Nayib Bukele, it became the breaking point. A state of emergency was declared. Constitutional rights were suspended. Police and soldiers flooded the streets. Then the arrests began. Not dozens, not hundreds, tens of thousands. People were taken from homes, buses, workplaces, and street corners. The government said it was dismantling the gangs that had terrorized the country for decades. Critics said the net was far too wide and that innocent people were being swept up alongside dangerous criminals. But the arrests kept coming. By September 2023, more than 68,000 people had been detained under the anti-gang measures. To understand how extraordinary that number is, imagine arresting roughly 1 out of every 100 people in your country. That is the scale of what El Salvador had done. The existing prison system could not cope. Facilities were already packed. Cells were beyond capacity. Every week, more detainees arrived. The government needed somewhere to put them, and fast. That solution became CECOT. The prison was designed around one idea: absolute control. High concrete walls, armed patrols around the clock, surveillance systems monitoring every section, drones overhead, no gang meetings, no orders going out, no power structures surviving the transfer. In September 2022, Bukele announced the mega prison project, although construction had already begun earlier. Under the pressure of the mass arrests, the facility became central to the government's war against the gangs. It was not designed to reform prisoners. It was designed to contain them. On the 24th of February, 2023, CECOT officially opened. The first prisoners arrived in heavily guarded convoys. Images quickly spread around the world. Rows of shaved men sitting shoulder to shoulder on the floor, many covered in tattoos, watched closely by armed guards. The pictures were designed to send a message, and they did. Bukele stood before cameras and said the government was fighting the criminals who had brought fear to Salvadoran homes for decades. To supporters, this was justice. To critics, it was something much darker. Inside CECOT, life follows a strict routine. Prisoners are confined for most of the day. Movement is limited. Communication with the outside world is heavily restricted. Every hallway, every cell block, and every open space is monitored. Supporters argue that this is exactly the point. For years, gang leaders had used prisons as command centers. CECOT was built to make that impossible. No phones, no meetings, no control, no way to run an organization from the inside. But this is where the story splits in two. Inside El Salvador, Bukele's approval soared. Many Salvadorans who lived through decades of gang terror support the crackdown because they point to something real. The streets changed. The homicide rate dropped dramatically. Neighborhoods once controlled by MS-13 and Barrio 18 became walkable. Markets that paid extortion money became free. Parents who kept their children indoors began letting them play outside again. For people who buried family members, paid gang taxes, and lived for years in fear, the results speak louder than criticism from abroad. To them, CECOT is not a human rights debate. It is the reason their children can sleep safely at night. But outside El Salvador, and among human rights organizations, the picture looks very different. Critics argue that many people were arrested without proper evidence. Some were allegedly detained because of tattoos, where they lived, who they knew, or because they were related to someone linked to a gang. Human rights groups have warned that mass arrests without due process create a different kind of danger. When innocent people are swept into prison, trust in the justice system collapses. When emergency powers are extended again and again, temporary measures start to look permanent. And when thousands are held in extreme conditions without trial, the question becomes whether safety is being bought at too high a price. Reports from inside CECOT remain limited. The government controls access to the facility, and independent journalists and international monitors have faced restrictions in documenting conditions. What has emerged paints a picture of extreme confinement. Inmates have little contact with families. Legal representation can be difficult to access. The prison's purpose is containment, not rehabilitation. That raises a difficult question. Is CECOT solving the gang problem, or simply storing it behind concrete walls? The prison has now become a symbol far beyond El Salvador. Leaders in other Latin American countries facing similar gang violence have watched Bukele's approach with interest. Some have praised the results and suggested their own countries should follow the same path. Others have warned that copying the model without understanding the human cost could be dangerous. The debate touches something fundamental. How far can a government go in the name of public safety before it crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed? El Salvador today is quieter than it has been in a generation. The gangs that once dictated daily life have been broken, at least on the surface. Bukele has claimed that crime has fallen dramatically since his policies took effect, and many Salvadorans say they can feel the difference in their own streets. But the state of emergency that began in March 2022 has been extended repeatedly. Constitutional rights remain suspended. The temporary measures are beginning to look permanent. At night, the hills around Tecoluca fall dark and still. From above, CECOT glows under floodlights, a vast grid of concrete and razor wire set against the black landscape. Inside, thousands of men sit behind walls built to ensure they never regain power. Outside, millions of Salvadorans live in a country transformed by one of the most aggressive anti-gang campaigns in modern history. To some, CECOT is the prison that saved a nation. To others, it is a warning of what happens when fear gives a government permission to go further than anyone thought possible. This prison changed El Salvador. It gave many people something they had not felt in years: safety. But at what cost, and for how long, remains the question the world is still trying to answer.